Hi guys, welcome. So this reading is not about your person, it's about you. It's all about what you didn't see in the relationship, how you showed up, what you kept holding on to when you should have walked. And this is not about blaming yourself, but it's more about awareness so you don't carry the same patterns into something new. And this takes guts, so most people don't even try to look at their part in it. So if you're here, you are already ahead. So let's start with the first question. And the first question is, what were you not seeing clearly in this relationship? What were you not seeing clearly in this relationship? Let's see. We've got Six of Swords, King of Pentacles, and we have the Page of Swords. So we are starting with Six of Swords, and this is telling me that you were already trying to move through some kind of tension or pain while you were still in the relationship. So you knew that something felt off. Maybe there was emotional distance, there was some sort of disconnect, or just that this relationship was not growing. But instead of calling it, you tried to smooth it over and keep going. So I feel like you were not seeing clearly that just because things were kind of okay doesn't mean that they were getting better. So I feel like you were trying to stay calm here, just write it out, hoping that the hard part would pass. But some of that hard part was coming from what you weren't willing to admit. And then we have the King of Pentacles. So it looks like this person might have looked stable on paper. Maybe they were consistent in some ways. Maybe they had their life together. But emotionally, this card can show someone who feels safe but also stays stuck. This person was not super emotionally expressive. So I feel like you might have confused that with security. I feel like you were trying to build something long term with someone who wasn't actually showing up in the way you needed. But because they were not dramatic or chaotic, I feel like you told yourself that that was enough. So stable doesn't always mean supportive. There is a difference between someone being around and someone actually being present. And then we have the Page of Swords. So I feel like you were not just confused, you were constantly in your head about it. Because this card is showing someone watching, overthinking, and second guessing. So it looks like you were picking apart their words, trying to figure out what they meant, probably checking for signs that they cared more than they were showing. So I just see someone here trying to get answers without ever getting clarity. And I feel like that really felt exhausting. So I feel like you were not seeing how emotionally um, unavailable uh, this already was, and how much you were doing the mental heavy lifting just to keep yourself from walking away. So I feel like this person looked solid, but I feel like they were not really showing up. And instead of facing that truth, I feel like you stayed stuck in your head, hoping that silence meant something deeper. So when you are the one doing all the thinking and all the trying and the adjusting, then you already know the answer. So let's take a look. How did you let yourself down in this? How did you let yourself down in this connection? And we have Ten of Cups, Nine of Pentacles, and we have the Ace of Cups. So with the Ten of Cups, I feel like you already had like the whole picture in your head here, like the future, the potential, how good this could be if only this person would meet you there. So I feel like you saw the best version of this connection and you got attached to that version, even if the reality did not match that picture. And instead of asking, what are they really giving me right now? I feel like you were focusing on what this could turn into. So I feel like you started failing in not seeing the reality, and you started falling for the story of what this might have been and not what it actually was. So that's how you end up staying longer than you should. And then we have the Nine of Pentacles. So you are independent. You handle your life. But in this connection, I feel like you let yourself fall into the background and you were putting the relationship first and yourself second. So you may have made it look like you were fine on the outside, but on the inside, you were compromising way too much. So here, I feel like you told yourself that you can handle it, that you will be patient, you will keep showing up, but you are not being honest about how much that was costing you. Because there is a difference between being strong and pretending that it doesn't hurt. And then I feel like you had so much love to give here. But the truth is that you gave it away before you made sure it was safe to. So I feel like you open your heart maybe too fast or too fully without checking it if the other person was even ready to receive it. I see you as someone who poured love out without getting it back in the same way. And instead of pulling back, I feel like you kept pouring and pouring, hoping that this person will show up. So I feel like you let yourself down by falling in love with the potential here, not the person in front of you. And I feel like you put your needs in the background to keep the peace. And you gave love without making sure they could actually hold it. So being loving is not the problem, but giving it to someone um, who is not built to hold it, that's what hurts. So now let's see, what were you holding on to that kept things stuck? What were you holding on to that kept things stuck in this connection? We have Four of Cups, Queen of Cups, and we have the Eight of Pentacles. So we start with the Four of Cups, and I feel here that you were kind of emotionally in and out at the same time, if that makes sense. Like part of you knew that this is not working. I mean, you could feel the disconnect. The effort was definitely not being matched, but instead of walking away, you stayed in that zone of being numb, hoping something would change. So there was emotional disappointment here, but you held on to the idea that maybe this is just a rough patch, even when it wasn't. And then you have the Queen of Cups. So this is you, the giver, the one who feels deeply, who holds space, who keeps loving even when they're not being loved the same way. And this is where the trap is. I feel like you held on because you felt so much, and because of that, you kept showing up. Even in your frustration, even when you felt overlooked, I feel like you kept offering more of your heart, thinking that that would fix it. So I see you as someone who's trying to love harder just to feel seen. So that's kind of heavy here, when love turns into effort and you stop feeling safe in it. And then we have the Eight of Pentacles, and this is the card of work, putting in the time, trying to fix, to make it better. And usually when it shows up after the Queen of Cups, it tells me that this wasn't just emotional effort, it was constant emotional work and labor. So you were not just hoping, you were working to keep the connection going. You were probably adjusting, learning what to say, how to act, what to do differently just to avoid conflict or to be enough. So I feel like you were holding onto this idea that if you just kept loving and trying and staying patient, they will eventually, show up for you. But all that effort, like, this is love that's one-sided. So instead of walking away, you kept giving, hoping that that would be the thing that would finally make them show up. So you didn't ruin anything by loving. You just kept doing all the work in something that wasn't supposed to be this hard. So let's see, what truth were you avoiding the whole time? What truth you were avoiding the whole time? We have that card, we have the Hierophant, and we have the Two of Cups. So with the Death card, the truth is here that this thing was ending way before you admitted it to yourself. I feel like part of you knew it had run its course, but you didn't want to believe it. I feel like you were still holding on to the hope that something would come back to life, that if you just stayed long enough, things would change. But this card is not about temporary breakups or pauses. This is a full-on ending, you know. So the truth you avoided here is that it was already done. You just were not ready to let go. I feel like you were trying to revive something that was already done, and just leaving you. And then we have the Hierophant, and this one is tricky because it shows belief and commitment and tradition. And when it shows up right after Death card, it's like you were trying to hold on to what the relationship was supposed to be. Maybe it looked good on paper, maybe you had history, maybe there was a future already imagined, like you had a life, a plan, a version of forever, but that vision kept you stuck here. I feel like you were committed to the idea of the relationship more than the reality of it. And I feel like you avoided the truth because it didn't match what you believed it should have been. And I feel like Two of Cups is the hardest part here because there was love here. And that's what makes it so complicated. You are not making it all up. There was a connection, there was a bond, maybe even a soulmate type energy, but love alone wasn't enough to make it work. And you didn't want to admit that. You thought if the feelings were real, that should be enough to fix whatever was broken. So I see you staying because the love felt real, and that made it very hard for you to walk away, even when everything else was breaking down. So I feel like you avoided the truth in this relationship that had already reached its end, emotionally, even energetically, but the love and the belief in what it could have been kept you there. So you were not ready to grieve this connection, and you were not ready to let go of what you pictured here with the Ten of Cups. So you held on even after it stopped giving you what you need. So sometimes the truth is not that the love was not real, it's that it's not enough to keep two people growing in the same direction. And let's see, what pattern do you need to stop repeating in love? That's the last question. What pattern do you need to stop repeating in your love life? We have Knight of Pentacles, Three of Swords, and we have the Six of Cups. So the Knight of Pentacles, let me just move all these other cards on the side. I feel with Knight of Pentacles that you were, with the patterns, is your pattern is to stay, to wait, and to give it time. even if the connection is dragging, even when your needs are not being met. So I feel like you keep showing up with that slow, steady loyalty, hoping things will work out themselves out if you just keep being patient. But sometimes that patience turns into you settling, like you lower your bar without even noticing. And I feel like by the time you realize you're not being met halfway from the other person, you are already very deep in the connection. So your pattern here is that you wait for someone to catch up when the truth is they're not even trying. And then we have the Three of Swords. So I see you here get hurt and then you stay in the hurt way longer than you need to. And I feel like you hold this pain very quietly. I feel like you don't always show it, it builds up. And sometimes you take on the heartbreak like it's a reflection of you. Like if they didn't choose you, it must mean something is wrong with you. So I see you as someone who stays after the break trying to kind of piece things back together, even if it's already broken. So that pain that you keep going back to, it's not love, it's just a wound looking for closure. And then with the Six of Cups, this is where nostalgia messes with your head. So I feel like you remember the good times, you remember the start of the connection and the way they looked at you back then, and that's what you hold on to. So you just keep replaying the highlights reel and convince yourself it could go back to that place. But the pattern is that you keep giving people credit for who they used to be, not who they're showing up as now. So I feel like that keeps you stuck in connection that is already over, emotionally, spiritually, in any way, because you are in love with the memory and not the present. So the pattern here is that you stay loyal to someone who's already pulling away, and you just carry this heartbreak like it's a reflection of your worth. And then you let the past version of someone keep you attached long after they've stopped being that person. It's not your fault, but it's your responsibility now to break this cycle before it repeats with someone new. So don't confuse consistency with love, and don't confuse history here with the future. And let's do one more question, which is what do you need to do differently moving forward? What do you need to do differently moving forward? And we have the Star, we have the Wheel of Fortune, and we have the Seven of Wands in reverse. So starting with the Star, first here you've got to let yourself actually heal. Not fake heal, but real healing, and not just distracting yourself. Because I feel like there's still hope in you, maybe even for this person. But that hope can't grow if it's tied to people who make you smaller. So this card is asking you to come back to yourself, to your own worth, your light, your gut, and not the version of you that tries to be easy to love, but the one that knows they already are. So I feel like you keep giving your best self to people who don't give you space to fully show up. And then we have the wheel. So it's time to break the cycle because things are not just happening to you, there is a pattern here. And now that you've seen it, you cannot unseen it. This card is showing up when it's time to move, to shift, and not just by hoping things change, but by making different choices. That means you have to start trusting red flags the first time, not pushing down your intuition. And you have to learn how to say no sooner. So you don't need to wait for another hard lesson to prove what you already know. And I see this as your chance to stop repeating what keeps breaking you. And then Seven of Wands in reverse. So this is you being in defense mode for so long that you don't even realize how guarded you've become. Because you've been holding on, standing your ground, trying to be the strong one. But now, this is asking you to drop the fight. You have to stop proving your worth to people who cannot meet you there. And you don't need to convince someone to choose you. You don't need to work for love. So your guard doesn't need to go up. You only have to get your standards up. So you actually move forward by getting honest about what you've been settling for and why. And you do that by healing and not rushing, and by choosing peace over patterns, and by remembering that love doesn't require a fight. So you're not here to chase anyone. You're here to choose yourself fully so the right kind of love can finally show up and stay. So this reading was a little bit heavy, but you showed up for it. And it was not about blame, it was about awareness, because once you see the pattern, you don't repeat it, right? So you're not too much, you're not hard to love, but you can't keep giving your heart to people who don't know what to do with it. So take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and go love yourself the way you've been trying to love everyone else. If you're resonating, drop me a comment. I would like to know what you think about the reading, and I'll see you in the next one.